to have this be the experience, all right? So here's a way of thinking about this. Here I am right now, standing in front of you guys in Nashville. It's all about me, all right? Now let's go forward. Me later is me tomorrow, or me a week from now, or me in a month. Us later is all of us are going to go plan to do something. Like we're going to go sailing in the MAC race next year. That's us figuring out how we're going to be together. Them later is people we don't know yet. Folks we haven't met. Okay? Make sense? And you can go backwards with this too. So if you think about the way in the U.S. we organize our institutions against this spectrum of thinking about ourselves and where we are, we're all about me now in terms of time. So here's an example. Here is the gaming exercise. Everything is right there now. Who can you think of anything about playing a video game that's reflective? Can you think about anything about playing a video game that prepares you for the future? And television, I think, is maybe even worse, because video games give you a little bit of an idea that they can do some problem-solving stuff. Now, if you go new media like Facebook, what you realize with Facebook, and I'm a huge Facebook addict, and I have to admit it, and I've got to spend less time doing it, but what it's really about is me making sure that you know where I am. Get it? It's totally introspective. Here is the individual sport. So the individual sport causes me to have to work on physical fitness for sometime a month from now, right? And extending that a little further, you can see that team sports mean that we got to get together in order for us to be good at something together in the future, right? Talk about a sailboat program, right? Here's a museum. Museums essentially archive the past. Why do yacht clubs have permanent trophies with names on them in the glass? Because that's the museum of what happened there. Okay? It's all about looking backwards, which is a great thing, by the way. I think that's an excellent thing. Here's what schools try to do. Schools try to take history and inform the kids that go to that school so that they're in a decent place in the future. That's what they try to do. But the thing that's most important in connecting this spectrum is the family and the lifelong active friendship. It's around how we choose what we do with our free time. Did you catch that one? And here is how family is structured in terms of time. Isn't that wild? All right. So let me do some quick solutions, and then I'm going to go to some larger solutions for you guys to be thinking about. The very first one, I need that microphone again. To the media thing. So Angela's my wife is a genius. She said early on, we are taking our kids everywhere we've always gone, which included on the sailboat, which explains that picture of Elizabeth at 1 on a Wednesday night race. We just didn't not go on Wednesday night races. But the other thing she said is we're never paying for television, ever. Okay? So what did that do? It freed up $50 a month for me to spend on Spectra Lifelines. It's all about me right now. I'm kidding. That's the easy one. That one next, I love to think about this. If you take that $50 and you reduce the 60-hour consumption piece, you got enough money for 2 people to go become members of the Milwaukee Community Sailing Center and go sailing as often as they want with that sign that just came up. Isn't that amazing? That one's easy. Well, let's do some other ones. To the commute. Everybody always laughs at that one. Who lives where you live, kind of, because it's close to where you like to go sailing? My point, exactly. It's totally, I do. We picked our house for this very reason. It's a little harder with home prices the way they are. To taxiing, how about that concept of what the family is doing at the sailing center? And that is to actually commingle in the youth sport. To do things in intergenerational formats instead of doing things in segregated formats. Or, you could go really big, and here's where I want to really push this discussion for you. I want you to think about whether or not you can inject this idea into your clubs moving forward, because this is what I think is the key to the whole ballgame. You can mentor. And what is mentoring? Going big is mentoring first, is being able to take this and flip it upside down. Remember that time component? We're all allocated the video game. What's a mentor do? Hey, come on. Put the thing down. You're coming with me, and we're going outside to Fort Washington to see if we can snag a brown trout off the end of the pier. That's mentoring. Okay? The first job of the mentor is to turn things around. I want to show you some examples of mentoring, though. It's a J35 on Lake Michigan called Sabotage. These guys are deadly good. We cannot, we're fighting for the 2 spot with Sabotage in the 1 spot, miles in front of us. And I want to point out that this is Joyce, grandmother of 3 daughters here, who are the daughters of these 2 guys who are Joyce's sons. Joyce's husband, what's his name? Bob. It doesn't make any difference. The Savanash family has been sailing because the old guy, who's now dead, bought him a sailboat in 1976, and that's all they did all the time, and here they are. These guys win everything. This, to me, is mentoring from here to here to here. And everybody else on the outside sees it. They kick our butts. Here's another example of mentoring. This is a guy in Minnesota named Werner Maybaum. Look him up on Facebook. He's an old German, probably 75, who remembers in his childhood experience somebody taking him for a ride on a lake in Germany on a sailboat for free. He was walking down the sidewalk, and they said, "Hey, you want to go sailing?" And they took him sailing, and he fell in love with the thing. They came to the United States, got a job, became an engineer. In retirement, he talked the park system in Minneapolis to allow him to have a little dock space on, what's the name of the lake? Calhoun, Lake Calhoun. And he takes anybody who wants to for a sailboat ride on this boat that he's acquired from this dock space. This is the lineup he gets. He probably pushes out 10,000 people a summer. What he does, it's just an amazing thing. He sits down there and he says, "Hey, you want to go sailing?" Anybody happens to be walking by. Family of 4? Sure, they do it. Kids from China who happen to be going to college there? Sure, they'll go do it. And he takes their picture and he friends them on Facebook, and now he's got this network of 80,000 people who are his friends. It's an amazing thing. I think of that as real mentoring. Here's another example. Dave Irwin is here. And I got to tell you, we've become, I just met him yesterday, and we've become the best friends ever, and I'm going to explain why. So, about, what month? July, August. Maybe.
September.
Yeah, so maybe August we started talking about this. Dave calls up and he says, "Hey, I know your girls are up there racing that J30 and the women's program is doing pretty well. I've won the J30 North Americans a couple of times. I'm just a guy from New Orleans. If we met him in Annapolis next year, maybe we could, or for the North Americans, maybe we could do pretty well with those teenage girls." So we thought, who are these guys from New Orleans trying to get us to send our teenage girls to Annapolis? Yeah, pretty much. They were sailors, yeah. But we got on the phone with Dave and his friends, and everything felt right. So we put them on a plane, and we shipped them off to Annapolis. We got them a place to sleep in a boat. And these 4 girls, this is Kate and Elizabeth the towhead. This is Allison and Whitney Kent. These are the 4 girls that had the Merit 25 in the women's offshore series. Whitney and Allison have just slaughtered the Division III fleet on Milwaukee Bay with that J30. And the girls are doing really well with it. So they went out to the North Americans. They'd never been seen before. They'd never sailed together. They, I think, lowered the average age in the room again by maybe a decade just because they were there. And they came out in the first race on the Chesapeake and beat the fleet in the North Americans. It was amazing. So then they had another 7 races and ended up with this 5th place trophy. And I didn't think my kids' lives could be changed further. But they are completely different than when they had this experience because Dave decided to call up from a distance and make this happen. That's mentoring. And here's another example of mentoring. Remember this? So I think it's so important that youth programs hire the kids that they teach to become teachers. I think that's a critically important way of thinking about it. And if you don't do that, you're not giving the chance at mentoring to start to take shape. Okay? All right. Now, why is mentoring important to begin with? I want to throw a couple last thoughts at you. The first one is, remember this graph that goes up and down, answering the question of what was going on in the period pre-79 and what happened in 79 and what happened post-79? Well, it took a while for me to figure out what to try to correlate it with, but we had enough data that explained who people were sailing with. We asked the question of sailors, a lot of them, 1,000 or so. Who was in the group you were sailing with when you were doing the sailing to the top? And what we found out is that the percentage of sailing experience in family groups was 80% at the peak. So in 1979, 80% of the time we were sailing in intergenerational family groups. Uncles and kids, grandmothers and granddaughters, 80%.